Well, just bluntly put, guys, this is a pagan holiday. No matter how much the church tries to convince you of something else, it is a pagan holiday. Christ did not rise on this particular day. This is a fabrication of the Catholic Church. When you go back far enough, it actually goes back to the Council of Nicaea in like 300 and something AD. I don't remember what exactly it was. The church pretty much got let off the chain around 300 AD, and then this was just the continued corruption that happened inside of the church. So that's exactly what this comes from. While it is still an important event, there is nothing more sacred to us in our faith than the day that Christ actually rose from the dead, because that put the final seal on death. Death is no more. The journey was fulfilled at that particular point, and now we have the gateway that we do to be right with the Father. Yeah. But yeah, this is as pagan gets.
I think we all get the feeling that something just isn't right in the world. Welcome, fellow foilers, to the Tinfoil Hat Club, where we dare to discuss all the things we don't talk about in church. And where yesterday's fiction becomes tomorrow's fact.
When you've got a government that's lying to your face, controlling the information through the media that it owns, that's not a recipe for peace in a civilization.
Atomic. The electromagnetic waves affecting our planet.
Megalithic cyclopean sites.
Anderson Cooper, intern for the CIA.
Watchers in the days of Noah.
Well, hello and welcome to the Tinfoil Hat Club. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Ben.
And thank you for joining us yet again. So, we have a good show planned for you guys today. Sorry about a little bit of a late delay. We're actually in the middle of some studio changes. So, soon when you guys see us in the future, hopefully the next episode even, maybe we can get rid of some green screens behind us and actually have a proper studio. So, we're working on some of those things, obviously updating some tech, and just trying to give the best production to you guys humanly possible. So upping our game a little bit to provide as much value as humanly possible to you guys. So thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Now remember, we record all of our shows live. All right. So if you guys want to join us live, we would love that. Just head over to our website, tfhc.com/live stream, or just click on watch live when you get over there. And we would love for you guys to join us on YouTube, Rumble, the TFHC, whatever the case is. You can find us on any of those channels. We can see all of your comments coming in. So drop your comments in the chat, and we'll try to get them as soon as we can to incorporate them into the stream. And of course, if you guys like what we're doing, please do make sure that you give us a like, a subscribe, a follow, a share on any of the platforms that you watch us on, YouTube, Rumble, in any of that. That is one of the simplest ways that you can actually help to support the show and help push the algorithm to as many people as possible. Commenting is also a great way to do that. So as we've talked about many times, we very much view this as a ministry. So if you guys would do that, that would be fantastic. Please do make sure when you go over to our website as well that you actually sign up to get our newsletter. So you will see a pop-up box appear when you are over there. If you fill out all that information, we're going to send you, we're going to get you on the newsletter list, which comes out every Monday, but then we're also going to send you an invite to our private Facebook fans group. And then you can also, you're also going to get an email for 20% off your first purchase in the merch store. So that would be fantastic if you do that. If you want to go further in supporting the show, all right, and everything, guys, is about supporting the show and helping support Ben and I in our ministry. That would be really great. If you want to go one further and you actually want to become a member of the show, we do have some episodes that are members only, and some of our live shows that we record with guests are also members only. We're making some changes there. Head over to our website that is for our membership, the tfhc.supercast.com, or if you go to our website, the tfhc.com, and you click on members, you can get to any of that stuff. So if you would check that out, we would be much appreciative. We've actually trimmed it down. There are only 2 levels that you can be a part of, a regular membership level and the HD membership level. And HD will obviously get you access to all of our content, all of those gated episodes that only HD members can get. So that would be great. All right. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's show. So Ben and I have decided to talk about today, given the fact that today is actually Easter. So it is Easter's.
Resurrection Sunday.
Resurrection Sunday, according to the church. So, but we wanted to get into that today and actually share with you guys a little bit more about that because, well, just bluntly put, guys, this is a pagan holiday. No matter how much the church tries to convince you of something else, it is a pagan holiday. Christ did not rise on this particular day. All right, this is a fabrication of the Catholic Church. When you go back far enough, it actually goes back to the Council of Nicaea in like 300 and something AD. I don't remember what exactly it was. The church pretty much got let off the chain around 300 AD, and then this was just a continued move forward of some of the corruption that happened inside of the church. So that's exactly what this comes from. But yes, I'm sorry to tell you, while it is still an important event, we obviously do. There's nothing more sacred to us in our faith than the day that Christ actually rose from the dead, because that put the final seal on death. Death is no more, and we actually have a resurrected Savior, and the journey was fulfilled at that particular point, and now we have the gateway that we do to be right with the Father and get back into heaven and have eternity with Him someday.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is as pagan gets.
Yeah, it is. Pagan.
Yeah. Hello, pagan. So yeah, again, it goes back to the Council of Nicaea. All the things that you typically see with this, you know, the Easter bunny, all these things. We're going to get into that today. We're going to do some sharing today with some information, and that's really what we want to get into. But ultimately, this goes back to Ishtar. And I know I watched a video this week where some dude was like, no, it has nothing to do with Ishtar. It goes back to the king, and they had something with eggs, and they would hard boil the eggs because the eggs wouldn't keep. And I'm like, eggs keep for like ever. What are you talking about, bro?
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but it was like, no, it has nothing to do with Ishtar. And no, it ultimately, at the root of it, absolutely goes back to pagan traditions and pagan roots, and Ishtar is one of those pagan traditions and pagan roots. Sorry, but it's just the case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember. There's only one, like, we really didn't growing up, get into, like, the festivities.
Yeah.
Which, well, my dad, if you know my dad, you know, he was a anti-pagan anything.
As he should be.
So
as a pastor, especially.
Yes, he would let people know that. And he would always say it tongue in cheek too.
Well, especially for him coming up, you know, he had to be careful or he would be run out of the church.
Yes, and he would, like,
which really stinks.
He was like, this is not.
It's like Christian's pagan.
Yeah.
Easter's pagan.
So it was like, I don't ever remember doing any
celebration.
Yeah. I mean, other than getting with family.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we did today.
You know, and I'm not one to. If you do, I mean, it's like you do Easter, might as well do all the others, right? Christmas. Oh
boy. Now we're gonna figured we were gonna get into that today.
Halloween.
Yep, a very pagan. Completely pagan. That's like obviously pagan.
Flag Day, why not?
Yeah, it's like I was sitting here thinking, and I'm going through the holidays, and I'm like, what all holidays are actually pagan? And like Valentine's Day, I don't know if you go back far enough, I would think that's probably I don't know if it's pagan. Wouldn't surprise me considering it's Saint Valentine, and anything saint typically has to do with the Catholic Church, which
any kind of, I mean, I can't think of anything wrong with Thanksgiving.
No, other than the fact that we decided to celebrate by there's a great, I love the thing about Thanksgiving is one of my favorite lines in any movie ever is the movie Maverick with Mel Gibson.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And James Garner's, you know, and it winds up being his dad, I think, at the end, but he's very pro-Indian, right? He's friends with the Indians, right? And I think that people are, you know what I'm talking about? People are bashing on the Indians, and he pipes up and kind of tongue in cheek goes, yeah, shame on them for being in our land before we got here.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, absolutely, man. Shame on them for being in our land before we got here.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's all got pagan roots and pagan traditions.
Yeah,
so
it does.
when you dig into it far enough, that's absolutely what's going on. And as we talk today, we'll pull some stuff up. But yes, Ishtar, and if you are not familiar, Ishtar is also in Sumerian. This is Inanna, right? Who is a prominent Mesopotamian goddess associated with love, war, and fertility. Okay, and I'll throw this on the screen so everybody can have fun with us here. So let me share my screen and throw Ishtar up here. So yeah, there you go. So there she is, the pagan goddess in herself. And obviously Sumerian. Now, when you get into the who came first, the chicken or the egg, right? When you get into that, it winds up becoming, were the Sumerians first or were the Jews first? Which one has older tradition? Which one was first? And a lot of the people that are non-biblical, right? And I don't know how they come up with this. They like to say that the Sumerians are older than the Jewish culture. Yeah. And that's where we get, the Anunnaki and all of these things. They came down, these aliens from another world came down and they visited. And that's where we get all of the stuff that we get, today is from the Anunnaki, the gods that visited from another world and made humankind. And then they left us, and then they just come and check on us like we're some pets in a terrarium or something.
Yeah.
And when you go back far enough and you actually do the research, it actually takes you back further than that. And the records in the Jewish culture and the Hebrew go back further than the Sumerians. Sumerians didn't really, in my opinion, even exist until after the flood.
Yeah.
And obviously Jewish culture ultimately at its root, right, goes back to pre-flood. We go back to Adam, and then, the Sumerians have their own culture and stuff. So, but yeah, Byron actually made a comment here. I'll throw it on the screen. Paganism and Christianity are both based off the sky clock. Sky clock. You would have to elaborate on what you mean there, unless Ben knows. I'm not familiar.
Probably the
lunar
constellations.
Oh, constellations. Yeah. Yeah. And that is, if that's what you're referring to, Byron, that is absolutely correct, because one of the first things, and I mean, it was like the first thing that was done to throw everybody off of God's calendar was the changing of God's calendar. Yeah. And to pull everyone off of that so that we would lose track of feasts and festivals and basically communion with God. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. And if you want to know, like, if you, it's so funny because if you want evidence of like Christian being pagan, well, okay, let me ask you this. When was Passover? It was literally like the week prior to what we are now celebrating as Easter.
Yeah. So
Christ would have actually risen last Sunday.
Yeah.
And yet now we're celebrating a week later, this. So he says, Byron says astrology. So yeah, when you go back far enough too, which makes a lot of sense, because I don't know, Byron, if you've ever watched the show before, but one of the things we've talked about is that's one of the things that when you go back and you actually dig into your Bible and you can read is especially when we got off the boat, we found technology or watcher information that took them right back to worshiping all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where we get the Sumerian culture and all of the Mesopotamian area, and everybody that came from there was basically doing the same exact stuff that they were doing prior to the flood, which is worshiping every god and all these other things, but, the God of heaven.
That's true.
Which I think Ishtar actually is associated with Venus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, okay, here's another one for you. And I'll bring the screen back up again so we can dive into this a little bit. So this may or may not be familiar to you, but a few things here that you can read just even on good old Google. She is the goddess of love, war, and fertility. Okay, multifaceted deity embodying both the passionate nature of love and the destructive force of war. as well as being associated with fertility. So she's known as the Queen of Heaven. Okay. And symbolism for her is an 8-pointed star. All right. So let's just go and have some fun here, and we'll look up what an 8-pointed star looks like. And I will share this tab. And you can see here, this is often associated, it's known as an octagram. Okay. It's geometric figure with 8 points formed by 2 squares intersecting at their vertices. Okay. It's a type of star polygon. This is typically associated as the Star of Bethlehem. The Star of Ishtar is also the Star of Bethlehem. The other thing too is when you actually look at what the Star of David is, that is also pagan. So I'll just type that in here. So we have all of this stuff here. Okay. And it became a symbol of Judaism, but when you go look at the actual history behind it, okay, it's pagan. David did not have any star associated with him. This is all pagan. Okay. It's not correct. It's not biblical. Okay. You're not going to find any of this stuff. And that's exactly what all this at its root is about. Now, one of the other things too is Easter itself, okay, comes from, I want to get this right here. Yeah, it's an Anglo-Saxon goddess. So even if like, well, it's not Ishtar, it's just another goddess. But ultimately it's like this continued rebranding. Yeah. You know, of the same thing over and over again. So you have Ishtar, and then someone takes it and makes their own deity, and then someone takes that and makes it their own deity, and it's like multiplicity. Yeah. You make copies of copies of copies, and then, but if you trace it back to its roots, it comes back to Ishtar, and actually probably goes back further than that to something that maybe we're not even familiar with. That was probably even pre-flood.
Probably one of the angels.
Yeah, probably was. Yeah,
more than likely.
Yeah, more than likely. So you can see here the name Easter, okay, for the Christian celebration of Jesus' resurrection comes from the Anglo-Saxon goddess Eostre, who was honored in the spring, while the Christian meaning of the holiday is centered on the resurrection. The word Easter itself has pagan roots, specifically connected with the goddess of spring and dawn.
I think Ishtar was actually, I think that might have been Nimrod's wife.
Yeah, I think I've heard this before too.
Yeah.
Well, Inanna.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think we actually said that we did read that, I think, a second ago, was Inanna.
Yeah.
So yeah, Byron also says over here, Jesus is a metaphor for the sun. Easter is the return of the solar year. Okay. And again, Jesus, I think I heard somewhere that Jesus is actually it's kind of a Greek. We've pulled that out of the Greek over time.
Yeah.
Like originally it would have been Yeshua, obviously, back in Hebrew. So I think, you know, if we've mangled that along the way somehow, which that wouldn't surprise me, Byron, if we get in there. Zen would be the one to be able to tear that one 60 million ways from Sunday if we had Zen Garcia here with us. We should have invited him on this little journey today. He'd have had fun with this one. So yeah, all of this stuff, you know, when you go into this, and fertility, right? And here we just read the same thing for Ishtar. Eostre was associated with spring fertility and the new life season.
Yeah.
As Christianity spread, the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus became aligned with the spring season, and the name Easter was adopted, likely due to the association with the goddess Eostre.
Yeah, because when Nimrod, he was dismembered, and like 13 members of his body was cut up, and one very important member was missing.
Oh, would that be his phallus?
Yes.
His wee wanger?
And that's why, like an obelisk always had a reflecting pool pointing to the capital.
Well, that sounds familiar to me, Ben.
Yes.
It draws an image to mind of something.
So there's the world's largest phalluses in Washington, D.C.
Oh, that's because I'm getting ready to type that in.
With a reflecting pool to the Capitol building. And what is the Capitol? is the District of Columbia, and that's another name for the goddess
Columbia.
Columbia.
Mm-hmm. I was pulling this
And
up
that's
here.
her womb, the womb of Isis.
Yeah, so here we go. We'll just pull this up for the kids. So here we go. We'll share this so you guys can see on the screen. So we're going to throw up on the screen. I know that you guys are listening via the podcast. Maybe not so much can hear us, but we'll just go ahead and click on this, and we'll go to good old Wikipedia here. But yeah, you can see the Washington Monument and the pool. Yeah.
And then on the other end of it is the Capitol building.
Mm-hmm. And I think when you look down from the top on Washington, D.C., isn't it also arranged in I think it's an 8-pointed star also?
I thought it was
Maybe it's a 5-pointed pentagram or
I
something.
thought it was a pentagram.
Which, obviously the founding fathers were Masons.
Yeah.
Right? So that doesn't surprise me.
Lines and angles and
Yeah, I'm gonna try
such.
to. Yeah, it's really funky when you look down from. I mean, it's like there's no doubt about some of this when you actually go look at it. You can see, the pentagram here. It's clearly designed and drawn into Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was very pagan in its creation.
Yeah,
because obviously Masonic stuff is pagan in its base. So Ellen G. White's Melissa over here with a comment. I am not familiar with this, so we might have to dive into this a little bit. I'm getting all kerfluffled on my buttons here. Here we go. So she actually says Ellen G. White's tombstone is an obelisk. Also, are you familiar with Ellen G. White? Who that is?
no.
I'm not either. Melissa, you might have to educate us on Ellen G. White. Let me see if I can pull her up really quick. Ellen G. White. And Melissa, it's always good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Looks like, is this here, her here? Man, easy for me to say. Seventh-day Adventist Church. Okay, so she was an author and co-founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Go figure.
Huh.
And then
I probably knew the name, but just
I probably heard it along the way too. And then, of course, we have the obelisk that sits in Washington, or not Washington, but Central Park.
Yeah,
Cleopatra's Needle.
Yeah, that's interesting too.
And which was actually from
we'll
pull a picture of it here.
Egypt.
Right? Yep, from Egypt.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Sitting right in Washington, D.C. Now, anytime you see any of these obelisks right here, that is absolutely 150% what they represent. They represent the male genitalia, phallus. And ultimately that all comes to power and reproduction and
it's crazy.
All kinds of stuff. Yeah, and we know, like, we go back far enough. A lot of people don't know this, and I think maybe we talked about this in one of our last shows, but if you go back far enough in the Bible, right, you actually can trace, like, Egypt. Egypt was one of the names of Ham's sons. That was one of Ham's sons.
Yeah.
And so we can follow all of Ham's line, and we know that they got into all kinds of stuff, right? That was part of that.
Yeah.
So, all of Ham's sons got into stuff. I want to say some of Japheth's kids got into things, and I can't remember who Cainam's line was. I think that might have been Japheth. But they got into all of this sun worship and moon worship and celestial worship, basically. They all got into celestial worship. And then the whole Mesopotamian area and what would effectively be the Promised Land, and then Egypt, that whole area became inundated with this stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's when Abraham finally steps up and steps out and says, no, I don't want to have anything to do with this. God says, I like this cat. I can make something of him. So that's when he chooses him and says, I'm going to give you back the land that was illegally taken from you in the first place. And then, we can read the rest of the story in the Bible. So, but yeah, all of these things kind of come back to longstanding pagan tradition, which was brought into the church via the Catholic Church. And now I want to say this. We always say this anytime we get into these things. If you're Catholic, you're not a bad person. We're not trying to say that. But what we are saying is these are historical facts. You can go back and you can look them up about your church that you belong to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all churches
Yeah, and they have all, and since we're all branches of Catholicism,
Yeah.
we all come from the same, corrupted, rooted tree, and pretty much have this stuff now.
I had a thought and it went away. Isn't that sad?
You got poofed?
Yeah, it got poofed.
That's been happening a lot to me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm starting to get a little worried, y'all. If you want to pray for me because the gears are starting to slip a little bit, I'm like common stuff here lately. I'm just like, man, there's just so much going on and so many different things. But yeah, it's been kind of crazy. So,
one thing, as we always say, the people we talk to and the lines that we are drawing, conclusion wise, from we talk to this person, we talk to that person, and it's all forming some kind of mosaic.
Yes, it does.
And as we were talking about the goddess, what was it, from Anglo-Saxon, whatever. Easter or whatever.
Ishtar or whatever her name is, yeah.
And then the guy we talked to a few weeks ago that does, the crop circles and things, throwing back to show if you didn't listen to it live, well then,
it's coming out soon.
Giving a little teaser for it.
There you go.
But you start dealing with these things and they do give you a power.
Yeah.
And they give you a false sense of security and a false sense of like, I'm the one doing it.
Yeah. And you're not.
And you're not. You're being controlled. And this goes back to, I hate to say it, everything goes back to,
it always does.
Goes back to Genesis 6. Just one time I want to say,
it goes back to something else.
Yes, it goes back to
it doesn't.
But it doesn't.
It doesn't.
But for the fact that they came down and then they were like, hey guys, check this out. And they empowered those people to do awful, terrible things.
Yes.
And they showed them things. And somewhere it's still in the DNA of us.
Yeah.
I mean, our DNA, they've said our DNA changed about that time, like 10%. And that's a big change.
Yeah.
Something happened then. And we're constantly just opening the door and letting those pagan things back in, those evil things back in. And every time we do a Easter service, a Christmas service, it's just one more. They're just marking up one more tally mark, and it doesn't matter what we do. We do something. Oh, there's one more. Boom. Got them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this constant warfare that we've talked to people and that we've realized. I mean, we started this because we had a passion for spiritual warfare, but I don't know about you, but since we started doing this 2 years ago, almost, we're coming up on there soon, not too many months more away, but the depth of that warfare for me it's gone beyond what I even thought was possible.
Yeah.
What I could even imagine. The level of warfare and all of this stuff is part of that warfare.
Yeah, it is.
And the things that you were just talking about, sitting over here laughing and I'm smiling because, one of the shows, we're going to do a show next Sunday as well. Please do join us for a show called Tearing the Veil. And really what Ben just talked about was all of the different ways while we wittingly or unwittingly are working to tear the veil.
Yeah.
To allow these entities to pass into our spiritual realm or from the spiritual realm into our realm and physically interact with us.
Yeah.
Again, wittingly or unwittingly, whether you're doing it on purpose, if you're a Satanist and you're actually doing a ritual to try to make this happen, or you're unwittingly doing it. In the case with crop circles, don't think we were in some instances knowing what we were playing with.
Yeah.
And the list just goes on and on. So join us for that conversation next Sunday. It goes even further than that. The illicit taking of drugs like ayahuasca and, DMT and all of these things where we tear the veil in our mind to allow things to pass through.
Yeah.
We've had shows on sleeping and what happens in our sleep with Vicky, Joy Anderson. It's just the depth of spiritual warfare to me is just, it's just insane.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense. I mean, like I was had a conversation on Friday at the group we like to go to. In the conversation, I basically just said kind of what you just said of how we sit at this intersection and the depth of the warfare goes beyond anything we could understand and imagine. And really what it boils down to is, we have an enemy that is thousands of years old as far as Earth years that we know of, right? I mean, we kicked this off in 6,000 years ago in the garden, roughly, somewhere in that time frame, and has been at war with us ever since that time. So we have an enemy that has perfected their warfare and their art for their our art's a bad way to say it, but their warfare tactics, maybe that's a better way to say it, warfare tactics for 6,000 years, the art of warfare, I guess, on us.
Yeah.
And I think about it, just put it in this perspective for everybody. This is what I said. I said, imagine if we as America, we wanted to go to war with X country. And I mean, we just went full on, pull out all the stops. Imagine the things that we would do to them. Cyber, psychological, indoctrination. I mean, just the things that we would do, like let alone troops on the ground and bombing you and all that, but all the other stuff that we would do. I mean, we've been perfecting for years how to break a human mind.
Yeah.
I mean, the conversation we had, about satanic ritual worship or satanic ritual abuse and how to break people out of that with Randy.
Yeah.
Dr. Randy Goodwin. Or sorry, not Dr. Randy Goodwin. Sorry, I gave you an extra title there, Randy. I apologize. Worthy of it. Better than a lot of doctors we know. You've been doing better work. But yeah, it's just incredible to me.
Yeah, it is.
And the depth of it. And the church is just completely catatonic.
Yeah. My brother posted something on Facebook earlier this morning about the Shroud.
Oh, Turin, yeah.
Yeah. And
he seemed like he's maybe a believer in the Shroud.
Maybe.
It's when I read it, I was kind of like, well, he's kind of pro-Shroud.
And I said, I've always believed it was real. And
which sucks because we probably wouldn't balk at that if it wasn't for the fact that the Catholic Church has done so many other things as a money grab to deliberately lie.
I said I believe that it is real. There's a lot of things that I believe.
Yeah,
I mean, I can entertain any kind of thought.
Sure.
But the fact that he died and he rose. And I think that was I don't want to say that was proof, but that was left.
You're saying the Shroud was proof that was...
Yes.
Because ultimately, when you look at the Shroud, the one thing nobody can explain is how do we have this...
Yes.
Basically like
image.
A burst.
Yes.
A burst of light that is this image has almost been instant flash burned on.
Yeah.
Through some kind of... Almost like they said it would take like a nuclear explosion almost of energy in order to burn it just on the surface of the fibers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
a great conversation with our friend Paul.
Yeah.
Had some great ones with him on that because he's into that.
Yeah. And so it being that, then I'm like, okay, this is how my mind works. Okay. Yeah, fine. Let's entertain Easter. Okay. The Shroud is white. An egg is white. Life is inside the egg. Life was inside the Shroud. I can entertain that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I get it. But
that's all it goes.
But unfortunately, it's wrapped in a gigantic pagan delivery vehicle.
Yes.
With a great big Easter bunny.
Yes.
And Snoop Dogg hopping along in his Easter bunny outfit at 420. Did you see that? Yes. When Easter happens on 420. I'll have to find that and throw it on screen because it is kind of funny.
But that, that's where it ends. Our Savior died for us. No other pagan god died for them and rose.
Exactly.
They were the ones that had to die. They're the ones that had to sacrifice their children. But who sacrificed his child? God.
God did for us. Yeah.
The supreme being.
So there you go. Snoop Dogg wishes everyone a happy 420 Easter. We're not condoning the use of any kind of illicit substance. Matter of fact, we would highly advise you not to do that. But anyway, but just funny. It's just good for a laugh. Do what you will in your own free time. But Snoop wishes you a happy Thanksgiving.
I
Uh,
I don't think birthdays are pagan.
no, I wouldn't think so either.
We had a few years ago.
And that comes from a comment by Melissa.
Yeah,
Melissa. Sorry, my tongue's not working today.
And yes, I what Oscar said too.
Oh yeah, I'll throw that up here. So yeah, Oscar says Yeshua, thank you for the proper Jewish there and not Jesus, was crucified on a Wednesday, resurrected on Sabbath, not Sunday.
I don't know about the Sabbath.
Oh, being a Saturday instead of a Sunday.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like, that's another one we've had so many copies. Who can tell what's supposed to be proper anymore?
Yeah.
Somebody wiser than I.
I mean, I can say I don't know about that, but
yeah. But I mean, the whole point is
it would have been a Wednesday.
It weren't today.
Yeah. And usually there was the regular Sabbath and then there was a high Sabbath for the holy day. Mm-hmm. So there was a Sabbath before the actual Sabbath.
They're pre-gaming.
Yeah.
Snoop Dogg would be proud again. But yeah, no, very much to the point. I'm like, you can see like just the bittiest ounce of research and common sense will tell you that this is not pagan, and it's pagan. Just like Christmas. We know by the festivals and reading our Bible that Christ was not born on the 25th of December.
No, more than likely it was 9/11.
Yeah, exactly.
-3 or -2 BC, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
According to Dr. Michael Heiser.
Yeah, which I would, if you're not familiar with Dr. Michael Heiser, we would highly encourage you to go check that out. So, yeah, my wife answered Melissa. She said, Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate anything at all, I believe. Yeah, I believe that is true. I don't think that they do that from a pagan perspective, though.
No, I think it's they don't want to elevate anybody.
Yeah, I think that goes along with what that is.
What Melissa said, we a few years ago, we stopped with the Christmas and Easter and all that a few years ago, and because we were like, this isn't right.
Yeah.
Why are we putting a tree up when they were commanded to cut the tree down, and we're bringing a tree into our house and setting it up, and we're literally bowing down to it to put something underneath it. Then we have to bow down to pick it back up and then pass it out, and it is decorated in silver and gold. That's in the Old Testament. I know people can argue all they want, but
that's been one that A and I have gone around because we didn't this last year either, and we missed the lights and the festive nature of it, just the feel that it gave, the warmth that it gave the house. So we've really been torn on that one because it's like we may do it this year, but obviously it's all about your heart at the end of the day. And for us especially, that the problem is that once it's like, how can you? That's the hard part. It's like, granted, now we know for a fact when we say, if we decide to put up a tree, our heart is not in the place of any kind of worship of these things, and that's not what it's for us. But it's just kind of tough because it rides a very thin line of
what I would say. Once when you get rid of it, you never have to worry about it again.
It is not like she does it all, because that is not my jam, dude. I do not want to put up a 9-foot tree, because we can fit a 9-foot tree upstairs, and I'm like, that takes like 2 hours for her to do that.
We were like, once we got rid of everything, and it's like, this is nice. But we started doing Hanukkah.
Yeah.
And that's better. That is like, you got 8 nights. And we do Bible study. We light the candles, open the curtains.
We missed Passover this year. You guys didn't do Passover?
Well, we were really busy.
Yeah, I know. It's hard. It's a lot to put together.
It is. We were like, well, technically we have a few weeks, but I don't know if we'll do it because
it's a lot
going on. And this year we were on the fence about doing one anyway for our church. So
I forget who it was. Maybe it was Mike Lake when we talked to Mike. And I'm sorry if I'm name dropping a lot today. I don't mean to do that. That's not what this is about. We just had so many great, awesome people come on the show, and we've had these great conversations. It's not about name dropping. It's just about credit where credit's due. But I think it was maybe it was him who he was talking about being commanded to. Do you think we're commanded even as Gentiles to follow the feasts? If they're supposed to be for us,
Okay.
because technically speaking, like it seems like a lot of these things were. I'd have to go back and read.
It's all the feasts point to the coming of Christ.
Yeah.
And then the return of Christ.
Yeah.
The fall feasts are the return.
Yeah.
You know, if you really want to, because he was probably born on trumpets.
Yeah, we talked about this.
He's
before,
probably
Mike.
returning on trumpets as the conquering king.
I was very surprised that we didn't see some cows get sacrificed this year.
I don't think they're going to do it.
You don't think so?
No.
Interesting. What makes you think that now? They would have done it by now.
They would have done it by now, and I don't think it's
Why did they go through all that then?
they're posturing
You think so?
for power.
Just to tick off the
Oh yeah.
Muslims?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're I don't want to get in too deep, but I think they're just it's a power grab. It's a power move. Because God's not there.
No, that's for sure.
I mean
He's not.
no.
So we're going to wake up tomorrow because you said that and they're going to have sacrifice.
Then
what we're talking about too, we're talking about the red heifers. I'm sure everybody's probably familiar with red. If you're not familiar with red heifers, you can go look it up. We've talked about it before.
Then if they did it, fine. You know, the best thing I can relate this to, we watched the Bob Dylan movie, The Complete Unknown.
Yeah.
And there was a scene where there was the standoff with Cuba.
Oh, Cuban Missile Crisis?
Yes.
Yeah.
And everybody was scared. And so, you know, everybody's hiding and everything. And so he goes and plays at a club that night. And so he goes back and wakes up the next morning, turns the TV on. Oh, it didn't happen. Okay. And then life continued.
Yeah.
I think if, you know, that's where I'm at right now.
The times they are changing.
And that's where I'm at with
Everything.
with everything. If I'm like to
It
the
happens,
point,
it
it
happens.
happens.
Can't stop it anyway.
Now, can you stop God?
Yeah, we don't typically worry about it too much. But it's just one of those where you just live your life and we don't worry about it. We're conscientious of it, but we don't it's not debilitating for us. I think some people just get debilitated through fear, but I think a lot of times those people that are very fearful, most times that I can tell, not always, but most times that I can tell, do not have a probably solid relationship with God and Christ.
Yeah.
You know, thus that's where there's a vacancy inside that's driving that fear. Because of like, hey man, you want to punch me out of this life? I'm with Paul. To die is gain.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not anxious to leave, but you know, to die is gain.
yeah, there's no, I don't think they would, I don't see them doing it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of flexing and it's like a pose off. Muscle Man show.
Yeah, because ultimately what you're referring to, I think, would be it all comes down to the Temple Mount.
Yeah.
And who's going to be the king of the Temple Mount.
Yeah.
Because right now the Muslims are.
And who's to say they couldn't go under the Temple Mount?
Yeah.
You know, there's all these.
There's 80 million things.
Yeah.
Well, didn't somebody sneak in like several years ago and get underneath the Temple Mount, or they were trying to excavate underneath the Temple Mount and they collapsed like a section inside the dome or something?
Probably.
I forget how this went. Melissa says Chastity Jameson did an excellent episode on the paganism of Christmas. And you know what? I'm going to give a quick shout out to Chastity. Chastity Jameson runs the Ancient Conspiracies podcast. If you guys have not listened to Chastity, go listen to Chastity. Chastity does incredible work. And she has a very unique membership structure, because what she does, she actually sells her show notes, because it takes her a long time to put together her notes for a show. And because she's just kind of doing it solo by herself. And it's a different format than Ben and I or a lot of people are doing. It's not really conversational. It's more instructional or educational, I guess is probably a better way to put it. But when you buy her show notes, guys, you're like buying a book. I mean, she she does a bang up job, and we had her on. It was a great conversation. Love to have her back.
Yeah.
She was a good conversation. I think you can find our conversation with her over on her website right now. And our edited episode with her will be coming out soon. So, but thanks, Melissa. That was a good call out because Chastity does a great job. But yeah, paganism, all this stuff, man. So really, ultimately, I kind of had mentioned this earlier, but this goes back to the Council of Nicaea. A lot of this stuff. The Council of Nicaea was in 325, okay, and convened by Emperor Constantine. Now, for those of you that don't know your history, Constantine was the first emperor, okay, Roman emperor to stop trying to kill all the popes. Because up till that point, man, the Catholic Church truly, as we would know it today, it wasn't, I don't think, the Catholic Church yet, but this is ultimately the start of the Catholic Church. They were heavily persecuted, guys. I mean, like, they martyred all of the first few popes, and they were under heavy persecution. And for the most part, from what I have seen, they actually didn't do anything that was against God. They seem to be following pretty much what Paul had laid down.
Yeah.
Paul, Barnabas, and everybody else.
Because it was just 300 years.
300 years, right? Which sounds like a long time, but ultimately not so bad. However, Constantine comes on the scene and he changes the game, and he says, you know what? Not only have we not been able to snuff you guys out, but under persecution, which we always see throughout history, you guys have grown. We can't stop you. So I'm going to take the brakes off this and take a different tactic. And if you guys endorse me, then, you know, everybody wins.
Yeah.
And so he starts giving them freedom to Rome. Pun unintended, but it worked well. And then, he even gives them land and money, and they just start going crazy. And one of the first things they do is they have this Council of Nicaea, because you know what the Council of Nicaea ultimately was? When I started digging into all this for preparation for the show, they were fighting over whether or not Christ was made or he already existed. That's what they were fighting over. There's a huge blow up in the church. And it was called the Arian problem, ironically enough.
Yeah.
And they were trying to figure out or come to a conclusion of, nope, this is what we are going to say going forward, and there's nothing else. Boom. Which they came to the conclusion that Christ was always there with God. He was not made.
Well, he was firstborn of creation.
That's what I always say too. But they were having a knockdown drag out in the church of it. So
I know.
So they get together. But that's not the only thing that I'm sorry. Condemnation of Arianism. And Arianism was the sect that believed that Christ was actually created because they knew how to read their Bibles. I'm sorry, that's mean. I'm not being condescending. There's a lot of people that think Christ was always existent, and that's fine. It doesn't matter.
He was firstborn of creation.
It doesn't matter at the end of the day. Why would he call him his son? Anyway, we move on. But this is where they come up with the Nicene Creed too, right? Because now it's not just enough that we've declared this. Now you are going to have this creed that you are going to recite at every service that you ever go to, which still today people recite the Nicene Creed in every Catholic service and every Catholic mass you're ever going to go to. You recite the Nicene Creed.
Yeah.
Right. So the other thing they did was they had a uniform date for Easter. The council established a common date for celebrating Easter, which had been observed differently in various Christian communities. That's because now we have pagans that are converting to Christianity, but they don't want to leave behind their paganism, and they want to bring this stuff in.
And they were pushing the Jews out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They pushed the Jews out of the church.
Oh, we can't have that. Or can we? Early canon law, the council promulgated a set of regulations regarding church practice and governance, which laid the foundation for early church law. So this is where this defined the doctrine of the Holy Trinity. And then this is supposed to all establish a foundation for Christian unity.
And it really didn't.
No. Because what do we have? We go a little while, but we have these just schisms that keep happening. Just huge breaks off the church, right? I think one of the first ones you come to, and if I can find it really quick, I'll throw it up. But one of the first ones that you come to is the Church of England. because everybody's getting.
Well, it was even before then. They threw John out. The church threw John out.
Oh yeah,
I mean, so it happened.
yeah.
Like, but that's what happens when man tries to run things.
No, of course we were corrupt and wicked. And
Yeah.
can't help ourselves.
We let pagans come in.
It's amazing to me. Actually, it just dawned on me, which is maybe I'm daft and I'm just stupid, but I'm like, man, doesn't that sound like what we do today? Because what they did is, you can come into the church and you don't have to change a thing. As a matter of fact, we'll adapt to you, and we'll just accept you and how you are, and you don't have to change a thing. No repentance required.
Yeah.
Bring your goddesses and your gods with you.
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's
new ways to do this oldest sins.
That's right.
Like you always say. So, yes, and I do not believe it was at the Council of Nicaea that we started just determining what was canon. I think that was at another, I forget that event. Council of Trent, I think, is where we maybe started determining canon.
Isn't that a thing that shoots a big ball?
Do what? Yes, exactly. And that's when we had Barnum and Bailey's first started operating.
Sweet.
The canon. No, I think Council of Trent is probably way too far down the line. They might have solidified whatever, but
it was the. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, there was a Synod of Rome, several synods in there that they got together, and they were trying to determine what was going to be and not be in the Bible.
That's another thing. That's who says.
Yeah, we had a good conversation on this on Friday too. Who determines what's going to be in and what's going to be out?
Pagans.
Well, ultimately, because you got to think, if you're going to let them in the church, they're going to wind up being in positions of power. I would guess at some point, right? That's just what always happens.
Yeah,
and that's how you human beings are just, we're like carbon copy. It's like running a bunch of morons, lemmings through a copying machine. Yeah, we just go further down the line. We get more technology, and we just make copies quicker. But that's basically what happens.
Thief.
So if you exactly, and you put pizza in your wallet. Yes, but if you look at what happens. Look at what's happening now. Yeah. I can't fathom the same thing didn't happen then.
Oh,
you've let them in the church. Now you've given them the doors open.
Yeah.
Their foot is in the door, right? We have sin has entered the room unaddressed, and now we go one further. Not only do we not address it, but then we completely turn a blind eye to it. And in some cases even encourage it. And then once we start to do that, then more people come into the church. And now those people overrule the people who should have stood up in the first place. And now sin is just rampant in the church. And then we start changing doctrine to match what is okay, right? Sin is okay in these particular instances. And then we wind up having a fracture of the church.
Yeah.
Right? We just had another huge schism in the Methodist church because of this very thing. We let sin get in the door. We didn't close the door on sin and throw it out when it was in our midst, call it out and throw it out.
Yeah.
And here we are.
I think, I know we're probably way off on what we were.
Not really. Because it's all, we're seeing the same things today.
Yeah. There's some people that I see on social media. They're not famous. They're just people I know. And they bring things up, and I feel for them because they have their knowledge is little to none.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see what they say or something, I hold, I don't judge them.
Yeah.
And I feel for them. And I'm like, how can I say something,
Yeah.
And of encouragement. That should be where we're at. When you see somebody, a fellow human being that's just, they want to know something, they want to learn something, but other fellow human beings are acting like total idiots.
Yeah.
And kill under the guise of Christians.
Yeah.
And we've said it. I don't want to say I'm a Christian.
No, it's been sullied so bad now that I don't want to even identify with the term.
Yeah, it's we should be Christ followers.
Yeah.
Well, and because paganism has got in, we could even throw Christian nationalism as paganism.
Ooh, Ben.
And the people that follow the party that's in charge.
Yeah.
They might as well. A lot of people think he is God or Christ returns.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. I like to watch documentaries, so I watched the one on Heaven's Gate.
Oh yeah,
did you watch it?
Probably a few years ago.
Okay. I didn't know it was. I thought it was new.
Oh well, we've seen some on there.
There's this one might be newer. It was on Netflix. I think it was on Netflix, and I watched it. But there was a guy on there that I thought about reaching out for the show, but I'm kind of on the fence about it. He was a doctor, and what he does is he specializes in cult behavior, like how cults operate, and like how they indoctrinate you, and then how to deprogram you afterwards after you get out. And he had actually written a book, which was The Cult of Trump. And I was like, ooh, saucy.
Yeah, I mean,
but then again, like watch. I mean, you probably had family members, and I have family members, even still to this day, where like if the man literally drug someone out on the street on live TV and shot them, they would write it off somehow as like he was just doing justice, or and again, it's just we're not trying to bash Trump or anything, but I mean, some of the people that follow him are just whatever. It is what it is. It's just like, don't lose your objectivity, I guess is the point I'm trying to make, is don't lose your objectivity to any human being.
But that's a form of paganism as well. Yeah,
losing your objectivity.
Yeah. I mean,
anytime you're worshiping anything that's not God, or Christ, I think that you've engaged in antichrist behavior.
Yeah,
paganism is antichrist.
Yeah,
we tend to think of antichrist as a person, but like we talked about before in John, it says that if you do any of these things, that's anti-God, or it's a spirit. It's a spirit of antichrist.
Yeah,
you're basically standing against the one who has designed to set you free from all of this junk. So, I mean, we could go on and on here about the sins of the church when you go back and you start looking at all this, but this is literally what we have today. And we're so far removed from it now that we don't even know where it came from, because we don't ask. We're just brought up in the church and we're like, oh, it's Jesus. How could it be bad? It's Jesus's resurrection.
Yeah.
But then you're like, well, wait a minute. When you start putting two and two together, and you're like, wait a minute.
Why is it a week after
Passover? Was like, well, I think it was even worse last year, because it was like Passover was like
a month,
like a month before.
Yeah.
Something like that. And you're like, what in the world? How are we celebrating Easter? Because the answer is because the Catholic Church deemed that you were going to celebrate Easter on the day you just celebrated Easter, which is today.
My wife was talking to somebody in another country on the phone the other day.
Okay. You know what my bad brain just did? It went, so she was getting tech support help.
It was an incident happened, and so she had to call in for some insurance help.
So it was tech support help.
So
I'm not a bigot. I was right.
And so
I mean, I might still be a little bigoted, but we've all experienced it.
As they're talking, like, so my wife's like trying to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And so in the middle of this lady goes, how do you guys celebrate Lent?
Okay, so she's Catholic.
And
I would think, or something.
He's like, what?
Something in that vein.
She goes, how do you celebrate Lent? And Marie's like, well, a lot of people, give up chocolate, give up, simple things.
Right.
And she goes, they're not allowed to eat meat on Fridays, just fish. She said, well, here we're not allowed to eat pork for 40 days, from Ash Wednesday to today.
Yeah.
And she said, what do you guys do? Like,
She's just trying to just genuinely learn.
Yes.
Strike up information.
and so like for the weekend, and she's like, yeah, she goes, because we were supposed to fast all weekend. Like they were supposed to fast all weekend, and they could only go like hiking or go to the beach. And Maria's like, oh, fasting, that sounds like it sucks. Hiking, that definitely. She goes, I could go to the beach. She goes, but no, we just usually, get together with, family, maybe go to a sunrise service or go to church. So Maria asked where she was. She was in the Philippines. That's where it was. And so it was just fascinating to, hear somebody somewhere else in another country that is definitely, heavily based with Catholicism.
Yeah. So a lot of countries are.
Which is fine. They're doing
good Catholics out there.
They're, doing what they're doing. And it's just interesting to see how, we as a world celebrate these days.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we're supposed to be following the same Savior, but man comes in and puts their own spin, their own feelings, their own laws and doctrines, and it's all false. And I just find that interesting.
We always corrupt everything that God makes.
Yeah.
Or deems for us good.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. We know better. We can do it better, God. Thanks for your help. That's very sweet of you. But we do. We get in there and we just start. We can't help. It's like we can't help ourselves.
Yeah. And like with this, them determining when was the best day to celebrate Resurrection Sunday.
Yeah.
That was man.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I'm sitting around having a whole council session with
because they didn't
bishops and everybody,
because they didn't want to believe what I'm gonna probably a minority, I'll say it, was telling them.
Mm-hmm. At this point it probably was
like, if
how many, it would be interesting to know, ratio wise, what percentage of people in the church at that particular time were pagan.
Well, you figure most of
pagan.
them at that time were probably Jews.
I would think so. Or converts.
Yeah. And then they were, so probably about that time they didn't believe them, or they didn't want any of it,
Mm-hmm.
So,
which makes perfect sense because, you can see in the letters from Paul to a lot of in the New Testament to a lot of the churches, one of the main points of chastisement is, you're supposed to stop doing all the things you were doing before. It's like, you don't just get to have you don't get to have Jesus and, you don't get to do whatever you want, what you were doing before. And, magically, Jesus is going to wash it all away. That's like one of the main things that comes to mind to me when he's writing the churches.
Yeah.
Chastising them on not turning away from their prior pagan beliefs and behaviors.
I want to go back to a question you asked a while ago about the feasts.
Yeah.
I think once we learn what they are, it's not so much, I was commanded, I got to do this. It's, we want to do them. We want to, it's
obedience.
It's out of when you do something out of love,
mm-hmm.
it changes your mind. It changes the way the feast are actually focused and what it's about. It's about my relationship with God.
Yeah.
It's about what he has done for me in the spring and what he's going to do for me in the fall.
Right.
Rather than, just.
Yeah. You.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about, being obedient, because in obedience is love.
Yeah.
Love is in obedience, and not wanting to displease your Lord, your Savior, your God, and follow what he told you and turn away from what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a whole world right now that is just completely 150% fixated on what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Like I go into our Christian podcasting group and I'm just like, oh my God, I want to throw up. It's disgusting, man. It's just constantly about healing and like getting free. It's all about emotion and like their own emotion.
Yeah.
Everything is like just so about themselves, not about, it's almost like spiritual warfare. I can't. So rarely will I read anything in there about spiritual warfare. And we have thousands of people in there. Yeah. And it's like, it's just one thing after another thing about healing from damage. And there's, I don't want to say that's bad because there is a space for that. But when that's all we flip and do is constantly focus on our hurts and pains and emotions and, healing. And I'm like, have you healed yet? Good heavens. You're not going to be, you're so focused on healing that you never do.
Yeah.
And you're no earthly good.
Yeah.
You're not, if you're not any earthly good, you're not going to be any heavenly good because you're not taking anybody there because you're so fixated on yourself because you can't heal. And it's like they go from one podcast to another podcast, to another podcast, to another podcast, all about how to heal from whatever X damage.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And it's like, if you ain't healed by now, man, after some time, then you got bigger problems. You don't want to heal.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's just sad to me. I joke about it and kind of scoff at it with Adrian all the time. I'll go through and I'll start reading them. And it's a lot of women on women stuff, like women for women all the time, women for women this and women for women that. It's like guys are just like thrown to the side. We're completely excluded almost from stuff anymore. And it's just about self and healing, which again has its place, but when that's all you ever do.
But that's not what you're worried about.
Yeah.
I'm
like, okay, when are we going to talk about all this? It's kind of like we're focused on the after effects, but we don't want to treat the root.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, if you went through a horrific divorce and you had a man that was abusive and all this and that, you need to heal from that. You have psychological trauma. I'm not trying to say you don't. I have a wife upstairs that has been through that and has had to go through healing process, but she healed. And wouldn't we be better served in a lot of these instances by treating the root cause of these problems and focusing on the spiritual warfare aspect that drove this person to become that way, to do these things, instead of just constantly trying to mop up the damage?
Yeah.
It's like we don't want to treat the root cause. We just want to sit here and just constantly just try to mop up the damage, mop up the damage, mop up the damage. And I'm like, you're never going to get it clean, man.
And some people like to talk about, some people keep ripping the Band-Aid off. They like
to hurt.
They really do.
They do. They have to have it.
They can't just leave the Band-Aid on.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to. I always tell people, I just push my feelings down to a deep dark hole and let them just not come out ever again. Because yes, you should talk about things, but what good does it do to talk about it? Other than it just,
well,
like,
there's some things, the way that I handle some things too, because I'm more of an extroverted person in some ways. And I will, where you stand with me, I'll tell you, and I'm more of that. I just get it out there and it's over with and done. But, there's still traumatic things that happen. And for me, when I have dealt with a lot of traumatic things in my life, I consider it a gift from God, because in a lot of, modern psychology, you'd be like, oh, that's not good. You're repressing your feelings. And it's like, no, literally God just kind of stuffs it in a drawer somewhere in there. And like, I don't even remember.
Yeah.
And like when some kind of conversation happens and it comes up, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when this and this and this happened, but I'm pretty much completely unemotional about it. Like a lot of it that's been long-term stuff. I'm kind of just emotionally divorced from it. Like it doesn't really bother me. So I can't really have these repressed emotions in there, if it's not like bothering me.
Yeah.
I would think. I just consider it a gift where God goes, yeah, you don't need those files. Let's just trash can. Let's just 86 some bad boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Put them in the file 13, them bad boys. Okay, we got a couple comments here we'll get to. So first of all, Tree Mistress, thank you very much. She said, Shalom, brothers. Today I'm celebrating the last day of unleavened bread. Awesome. Very cool. Oscar Sanchez says, yes, it was the high Sabbath. It's in the records, and I'm also flabbergasted by the amount of information I'm learning about how we have been bamboozled. Remember the Sabbath. There's a reason why the fourth, they took the fourth commandment out. I think that's for a reason. Remember the Sabbath, as the Catholicism will resurge, and we will have to honor the venerable day of the Sunday. So, yeah,
that is one of the commandments.
Remember the Sabbath, keep it holy.
It means we got to do it, and we don't.
Yeah,
and I will say that's, I'll probably, Seventh-day Adventist, they do that.
I will give them a lot of props for that. They do a very good job of that. I've always admired
and
their ability to do
and
that.
I know why they met on Sunday too, or not Sunday. The first day of the week.
They go from
No, I'm talking about the after they would meet on after the resurrection and everything. The disciples would meet on the first day of the week. Weekly or actually daily, but
yeah.
But anyway,
Seventh-day Adventists go from sundown Friday to sundown Saturday,
just like the Jewish,
right?
do.
Yeah, I've always thought that was neat that they did that.
Yeah, there's one in Lebanon now.
A Seventh-day Adventist.
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's kind of cool. I don't know. I'm on the fence with are we called to, observe the feasts and the festivals and all these types of things, and I don't know if we're called to, if we have to. What do you think? You think we have to? Because what you were talking about earlier is just you've chosen to. Like in your mind, you've chosen to, but you don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like you don't feel like, I've never gotten the feeling from you that you have to celebrate Passover. It's almost like you're doing it kind of honorarily to experience what that's like.
Yeah. And it's, I think doing it, if you do it, you're going to find a love. And I can't remember where it's at, but it's
Bible.
Yeah, Bible. I don't remember the address. And I'm just going to paraphrase it. It was like that the Gentiles would do it, and that the Jews would find it, be jealous of them because they found their first love again, if that makes sense.
Celebrate. Let me look this up, see if I can find it.
And I don't know if it's like a blessing or a curse, if that makes sense. But
it sounds like something God is kind of talking about. Maybe Romans 11.
Probably.
Let me pull up Romans 11 real quick, because I know that's the whole point of turning salvation over to the Gentiles was basically like, I am done with you guys.
Yeah.
You've ridden this roller. I've ridden this roller coaster with you over and over and over and over. I had the flood and started anew, and you guys still couldn't do it. And then you turned from me, and you turned to all these gods that you're worshiping, like we've talked about today. And then I find one guy who I can almost start over with again.
Yeah.
But we're not going to wipe everybody out because I promised I wouldn't do that. And then we start over with Abraham, and okay, I'm not even going to take all of you. I'm only going to take a part of you through his line, and only select through his line. And I have my people, and you guys reject me.
Yeah.
And you start worshiping all these other gods, and you refuse to stop doing it. So I put you in exile in Egypt, right? And because you just took on their same practices and culture, right? Even though your ancestors saved you from the famine, gave you the choicest land, the whole nine, right? I'm with her the whole way, right? I take your ancestor, I take Joseph in there, set it up for you guys perfect to live high off the hog, and you guys just can't help yourselves. And so then they get out, and God's with them, guiding them, literally physically present, guiding them right through, clouds and all kinds of stuff, right? Fire and flame at night, right? And parts the Red Sea, the whole nine, carries them, and they still turn. Like not even Moses can't spend 40 days on the mountain before they turn.
Yeah.
And then it's like, fine, I'm going to punish you guys again. And then Moses doesn't even get to see the promised land. He gets to see the promised land from like,
Well, that was his own
Nebo.
His own anger.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I
which
mean,
is kind of fun to look at some of these biblical
like,
patriarchs and see that they had massive flaws.
I mean, how would you like to have Moses? God, I'm going to kill them all. No, just don't. Then Moses, I'm going to just go ahead and kill them all. No, don't.
Which is funny because when you read in Jubilees, it's the opposite. He's up there, and at the time, he was compassionate to him, and he's like, God is telling him what's going to happen. He's basically ripped the playbook right open, and he's like, hey, here's what's going to go down. They're going to turn. And he's like, no, Lord. They'll never do that after what they've seen. It's like, no, they're going to. And I'm going to wipe them out. And no, Lord, don't do that. Let me talk to him. And he comes down from the mountain, and it's like, God told me. I didn't know it was going to. I didn't know that it was going on at the time, because I don't think he's telling him at the time that he's having this conversation with him. It's happening.
Yeah.
And then you go through the exiles. First it's the Assyrians to come through and takes the northern kingdom. Then the southern, they get scattered to the winds.
Yeah, they did.
And then you have the southern kingdom that gets taken into Babylon, and they come back, and they even fill the, place in, and, Gehenna with refuse and set it on fire so nobody can sacrifice their kids again. And then they just can't help themselves either.
Yeah.
And here we are to modern day, and it's just happened again. So I'm sorry, we got horribly sidetracked. Romans 11. Let's just see what Romans 11 has to say. We do have a comment up here, I think I saw. We'll get to that here in just a second. It was Romans 11:11. Let me just see. This is in the section where it's talking about the Gentiles being grafted in, maybe?
Probably.
So I ask, did they stumble in order that they might fall? By no means. Rather, through their trespass, salvation has come to the Gentiles, so as to make Israel jealous. Now, if their trespass means riches for the world, and if their failure means riches for the Gentiles, how much more will their full inclusion mean? Now I'm speaking to you, Gentiles, inasmuch as I am apostle to the Gentiles, I magnify my ministry in order somehow to make my fellow Jews jealous, and thus save some of them. For if their rejection means the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance mean but life from the dead? Now, it doesn't really talk about...
Yeah.
But I'm sure that's kind of probably in here somewhere.
I mean, if you really... comment.
Let's see what we've got over here. Anonymous, hopefully I got that right, actually says the scriptures never say to stop observing the feasts. That's very true.
What'd he say at the Last Supper?
What?
Do this in remembrance of me.
Right.
Not communion, the actual supper, because that was the Passover.
That's right.
That was the Passover meal.
Yep.
So technically, the Passover meal became the crucifixion meal.
Basically. Yeah. Pre-crucifixion.
Yeah. And we do this. So he knew that they were going to continue to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It was never stop doing this. No, can remember when you do it. Remember me. Instead of the Passover, remember what I did tonight.
Yeah.
Remember what I went through.
Yeah. Can't imagine, man. He also says it was Constantine's mom that had him merge the pagan holidays with Christianity to create a religion that was separate from the Jews. The feasts were too Jewish for them. I can't remember if it was Constantine or Nero or both, but I want to say he wound up killing his mother. I mean, I'll look that one up.
Probably Nero.
I know Nero did. He killed his mother and his son, I think.
Constantine's mother did a lot. She's the one that found a lot of the places that are now.
It was his wife and son that Constantine had killed. Sounds like a good Christian guy.
Yeah.
Then again, we could look at David and say David murdered people too, but I think that's very different. I do not think Constantine was a Christian. I think he used Christianity,
Oh, yeah.
but I do not think he was a Christian.
Just like a lot of political people today do.
Amen, brother. Amen.
To get that vote.
Yes, indeed. They do indeed. Tree Mistress, we'll close with your comment today, which is a good one. And this is about the festivals. God's holy days are like a hug. So, and then Melissa, we will address this because you asked a question. Whoa, I'm hitting things I don't mean to hit. There we go. And I'll throw that up on the screen. And that says, so Jesus is risen, but it was actually a week. Where can I find this? I don't know if we said that, did we? I don't know what we said. We don't know what we said either.
Kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, you have to tell us what you're talking about there, Melissa. So
if we said something, just kind of,
yeah. I'm not sure, and maybe somebody in the comments said something we didn't catch it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I think maybe what we said was it was from the highlighting the pagan side. Maybe this is what we said. Oh, she says Seventh-day Adventists celebrate the Agape feast on Good Friday. Interesting. So I would assume they're having that on Good Friday, so that would be like their Last Supper. Is that kind of is that what you're gaining from that too, or gleaning from that too?
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not super familiar with all of the Seventh-day Adventist stuff, but I know that they are very good about recognizing the Sabbath. So let's see what we got here. Oh, last weekend. Now the Passover was last weekend.
Yes.
Thus the resurrection technically would have been last weekend too, but I'm sure that's even been mangled by the many things that we've done to the calendar to corrupt the calendar.
Yeah, I mean, let's think about what kicks off this whole season. Fat Tuesday.
Oh, so now you're talking
build up to.
Well, Fat Tuesday, is that a pagan in nature? I can't fathom it's not.
That's the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday.
Yeah.
So,
which Ash Wednesday is the celebration of, basically a celebration of the 40 days in the wilderness.
So the night before, you go and you party it up. You do. You commit every kind of sin in the world you can on that. Is that
literally what Fat Tuesday is supposed to be?
Yeah,
I had never put that together.
Mardi Gras.
I cannot declare that I am a fat guy anymore. I did not know. I knew that was Mardi Gras.
Gras
which
is
anything Mardi Gras would
is
be
Fat Tuesday.
Is pagan gets,
and that's Fat Tuesday.
And they actually, have you ever had king cake?
No.
You're missing out because it is a pagan delight. But they actually take and this is Mardi Gras. This is Fat Tuesday. This is one of the ways they celebrate this. This is very well known down there. They take a figurine of baby Jesus and bake it into the cake. So yeah.
Yeah. But that's what kicks this whole thing off. So you start with quote unquote an orgy.
Get your slate as dirty as humanly possible before you go to confessional.
Yes,
kind of a thing.
Yes. For the next 40 days, you're not going to be able to do anything. So live it up, boys.
Oh golly.
Kind of like there's a quote in our house that when there's a quote from Lord of the Rings in our house. We probably say it daily. Meat's back on the menu, boys. So, just live it up for that one night, then 40 days to this day, then all of a sudden.
Pretty soon, you're not going to be able to say that anymore.
I know.
You're running out of meat eaters over there.
I know, but
yeah, I get you.
It's sad. It really is.
So Sherry, I know you're joining us late. Thank you. It's always good to see you on here too. She says blessings to the dudes in chat, but she's late, but she'll catch the entire show later. You can watch it on the playback.
Sorry if I rambled on today.
No, not at all. It's good to talk. We haven't had a you and I in a while, and we were in the process. This show for the first part probably looked pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. I'm ashamed to say that because it's my fault. We got a little artifacting going on and things. We're in the process of making some changes. So we promise the future shows will look a little better. Now, if you guys are listening, hey, you're none the wiser.
Yeah.
We just dropped the dime on ourselves. So, but we're honest here on the foil. So,
yeah.
But no, it's guys and gals. Get to celebrating the feast and stop celebrating the pagan holidays.
Yeah.
Just like I said today, because I do not believe in Easter. I do not believe in the celebration of Easter. I approach it, but I also don't want to smash people in the face with a 2x4 because that's not going to win anybody over either. So what I said, I think at some point today was when I said a prayer and I said what this day represents. And the day represents Christ resurrecting from the tomb.
I think
in Christian circles.
I think Easter doesn't have as big as ties as Christmas does.
No, I can tell you it doesn't.
Because there's no build up.
No.
There's no Easter carols. There's no 20 days of listening to music. There's none of that. There's no build up of it like there is Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Now I do like some Christmas songs. I mean, I really do. I mean, it's like it was ingrained in me from my mom to listen, to Christmas because that's her. Christmas is like her family. That was their time.
You just sit around and listen to "Baby, It's Cold Outside" and be as controversial as humanly possible. That's a controversial song now, Ben.
I know it is.
That's where we are.
I know,
but we can have songs like "WAP."
I don't even know what that is.
You don't look it up.
But I think Easter is not as bad as Christmas. Because then you have memories and you have feelings and like you said, the warm glow and all the little twinkle lights. But there's none of that with Easter. There's a stupid bunny and a Cadbury, whatever that is.
I will tell you, this is a fun childhood memory story. And we're totally off the rails now, but you guys listen to us so you know what you're going to get. Have you ever been so excited for like the presents and stuff that like you couldn't sleep?
Oh yeah.
I had that one time where I couldn't sleep because I was so excited to get a present because we would always get a couple presents at Easter.
Oh really?
Yes. In our Easter basket, there would be like a couple presents.
Oh, we never did that.
I know. Well, what can I say? I lived a high life when I was a kid. And I knew that I was going to get some Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like the good ones, the ones that aren't made like crap, like the metal ones from when we were kids. Like they were literally made of metal.
Yeah.
And, like were good quality.
Were you peeking on the...
Oh, it's jonesing so bad.
On the Easter Bunny?
Oh, yeah. I knew that was a fraud. I just wanted my Transformers, And my mom would buy me the same motorcycle bunny every year. He was a bunny on a motorcycle, and it was solid. And it was that was my jam. Motorcycle bunny, and I would never eat it all because I'm just.
What was the Transformer?
I know, it's sad. It's like in hindsight, I don't know. I kind of vaguely remember, but I don't even know what I couldn't even tell you what the name was. It's like a purple and green dude or whatever. I don't even remember. I couldn't tell you. It might have been Starscream, Starstreak, or Starscream or whatever. Starscream?
Yeah,
I think.
You're
yeah, right.
I'm like a nerd for that stuff, but
yeah,
we used to get Easter baskets for our kids. Maybe not like it was candy. It was like a bowl of candy.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go wrong with Reese's.
No, it's hard to go wrong. Yeah. The other thing that, like, when I had kids, my kids were too smart for their own good. So they were like probing me, like trying to find out, oh, well, Santa comes down the chimney. How does the Easter Bunny get in? I'm like, oh, that's a good one. You know what I came up with on the fly? This was my on the fly lie. The Easter Bunny has a magic lockpick kit. He can pick the lock to any door, and he can get into any house. He's a bunny burglar. He's not a cat burglar. He's a bunny burglar, but he's not a burglar. He leaves presents and candy.
A few years ago on Easter Sunday, we let the dogs out, and I hear this like high pitch scream, squeal. Like, what is that? And one of our dogs ate a whole family of bunnies.
Oh, yeah.
And
That's
she came up to the house. And I'm like, Shiloh, what do you got? And I didn't realize what it was. It's like, Shiloh, what do you got? And she like dropped it. And I was just like, oh, okay. I like get everything. And I put her in her crate. And I'm like, well, somebody's not getting any more Easter because the bunny. And so it's like, it's like,
yeah.
it's just,
Well, there's a reason why they breed
yes.
like they do.
And it was just, it's a funny, it's a dark.
It is. We've had our dog get at one before.
It's
Baby bunny.
Sorry if I made
No,
anybody,
that's whatever.
but
If you get a dog, they're going to get stuff.
yes. And when you have labs,
Yeah, they're definitely going to get stuff. So.
but it's just it's another funny story growing up. And that's what it should be about.
Yeah.
Making not,
yeah.
It had nothing to do with anything. It was just happened to be on Easter.
Yeah, it just happened to be.
And it just happened to be bunnies.
Yep. Things happen.
And that's life.
That is. That's how it goes, man.
Yeah.
Long story short, celebrate the festivals and don't celebrate the pagan holidays that
That's
the church
right.
tries to pump in front of your face. So, but yeah, there you go. So there you go. Now you've all learned about the pagan nature of Easter.
Maybe.
Maybe. Or at least you took a wacky journey with us today. But either way, we appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, we will bid you all adieu. Until next time on the floor. Take care.
Bye.
Atonement.